Hey guys, Constance here. Welcome back to A Good Life Farm. So it has been an indoor working kind of day today. It is absolutely pouring outside, although I think it may have finally slowed. So a while back we had a little bit of an incident when one of our freezers, we have two full-size freezers plus, our refrigerator freezer. One of our freezers just randomly quit working temporarily. I'm not sure exactly what happened, although we have a theory. We think the door may have been blocked to where it wasn't fully closed, and that freezer has the suction pump. And so when you go to close the door and it can't create the seal, that pump keeps going and going and going, and we think that's what happened, that the door was blocked and that it kind of like timed out and just shut off, like to keep the motor from burning up or something like that. So we had that panic of, oh my word. And what was crazy is, I think it was the day before this happened, I had the thought that, you know what, that we were way too reliant upon electricity for the food storage for our meat. We store a lot of things, a lot of other things, but when it comes to meat, most of our meat was in the freezer. And when we had that happen, we consolidated as much as we possibly could into the one freezer. What wouldn't fit into the one freezer, we threw in a cooler. I started cooking and canning a lot of it. We gave a bunch of it to my son and daughter-in-law since they live here locally. And but in that process, stuff just kind of was all over the place. Prior to that happening, I had an inventory of all of the contents of the freezers so that I knew exactly what we had, how many roasts, how many chickens, how many everything that we had. And I have a whiteboard system that I created where I just bought a little whiteboard and I hang it on the wall, and I use a label maker to make labels for all of the items that we consistently have on hand. Not necessarily all the time, but things that we frequently have. And so then I just use a dry erase marker and make the little hashtags to keep track of the inventory of how much of everything is in there. And then if there's things that we have in there that we don't, isn't something we usually have, then I just write it in on the whiteboard. And then when we would take something out of the freezer, I would just erase one of the little hash marks. And if we add something, then I would add a hash mark. And just, that was how I kept track of everything. Well, when we had the freezer fiasco, that inventory list went out the window. Stuff was all mixed up. Some stuff, went out the doors. Things got cooked. Stuff was just, it was chaotic. And I never really got a grip on all of the contents in the freezer after that. We would get things, use things, whatever. That inventory list was just, pointless at that moment in time. And so since I had a day today where I really could not do much of anything, because it was absolutely pouring. I had a doctor's appointment this morning, and so that took part of my day, but when I got back, it was raining, and it has been pouring all day long ever since. And the temperatures are just dropping and dropping and dropping. And I know that a lot of the country, or a lot of the eastern part of the country, like Kentucky and Illinois, well, a lot of the Midwest, they're all looking at snow and ice. We're not necessarily looking at the ice, we're just looking at buckets and buckets of rain again. All right, so phone rang. So now I gotta remember, where was I at? I think I was talking about Oh, the weather, the rain. Tons of rain, tons of rain, and it's getting cold. I think the temperature is supposed to steadily drop over the next 24 to 36 hours, and it's like it's not going to go up at all. It's just steadily going down and down and down. And I think the high tomorrow, or the average temperature tomorrow, is going to be about 33 degrees. So it's going to mean lots of ice and cold and just yuck. But back to the freezer. So I took the opportunity to go through both of our freezers and do a total inventory again. I went through all of the items to see what all we had, how much of everything we had, and I started making a plan. Like I mentioned towards the beginning of the video, I don't like relying so heavily on electricity for storing meats and foods because I mean, this storm system is a perfect example of what can happen. I mean, they're expecting a lot of power outages and things like that. And, you know, during the winter, it may not be so bad if it's a short power outage. But if you look at any length of time, you know, you've got food that you run the risk of potentially losing. And so it's always, I think it's always prudent to have more on the pantry shelf than you do in the freezer. And so I went through and I pulled out a whole bunch of ground beef, and I'm going to be canning up another batch of the Sloppy Joe mix. And that Sloppy Joe, that's not just the sauce, that's the sauce and the meat. So that's basically like a heat and eat meal. Like I mentioned in the Sloppy Joe video, you can consume that all different kinds of ways. You can heat it up and put it on French fries with some melted cheese, stuff it in a baked potato. Of course, you can use it on a bun. There's so many different things that you can do with that. And yeah, so I'm going to be making up another batch of that because I thought I was down to 1 jar, but I'm down to 2 jars. But that whole batch is gone. We loved it. We shared some with my son and daughter-in-law, and it is very, very popular in this household. And so I'm going to use up a bunch of that ground beef and make up probably like a batch and a half or maybe a double batch and get those in the pantry. I also pulled out a turkey because I've got 4 whole full-size turkeys in the freezer. Well, now I have 3. I pulled one of those out, put it in the fridge so it can start thawing out. So I will cook that turkey. I'm not going to brine it and all of that. I'm just going to roast it naturally, and then I'm going to use that meat. My dog's walking across there. I'll use that meat and can that up as shredded turkey. And then I have a few other recipes that I would like to do. I'm basically going through my inventory. I'm going through my list here, which is right down here on the table, and Ava's keeping it warm for me, making sure it don't go anywhere. So yeah, I'm just working on my list, seeing what all I'm going to can. And I have other things that I want to do too. I've got, I have several shoulder roasts and chuck roasts, and so I want to do like maybe some Hungarian goulash or some stroganoff, beef stew, pot roast, things like that, and can those as well. And again, reducing the amount that's in the freezer and increasing what's on the pantry shelf. Oh, and wearing this hoodie reminded me of a question that I was asked. I had a subscriber ask me if I was wearing an Alabama sweatshirt the other day, and at the time I couldn't remember I wasn't sure what she was talking about because she thought it was an Alabama thing, probably because she saw the A's on either end. But I'm like, I don't have any Alabama clothing. I may live in Alabama, but I'm not a sports person at all. And even though right after we moved to Alabama, we were told that we would have to choose I'm not a sports person. So when I got this hoodie, this sweatshirt in Alaska, it's because I loved living in Alaska. Not necessarily that it was a college or anything like that, just it was Alaska and I loved living there. So it's an Alaska hoodie. I totally had forgotten about this. And I have another one too. It's green. It's like bright green. It's an Alaska hoodie too, but this one's actually my favorite because it's like a thicker cotton. And sadly, it actually shrunk when I first washed it, and so the sleeves are a little too short. So I usually wear it when I pull the sleeves up. But I love it, and it's getting worn. Like it's getting holes in it and all of that, but it's like my comfy hoodie, and so I really like to wear it. Yeah, so I actually have a lot of hoodies, and I have another one too, like a pullover hoodie. That's an Alaska one that was a gift from a friend. And then of course I've got my own hoodies, like my Good Life Farm one and Wholesome Skillet and stuff like that. Which reminds me, in my t-shirt shop, they actually just started offering more organic options. So there are more organic t-shirts and there are organic hoodies that are now available. If you are interested in getting a Good Life Farm hoodie or a Wholesome Skillet one or some of the other fun designs that I have, you can find those available in the shop. And there's a link underneath my video for those. So I am going to get back on working on my list and determining what all I want to can in the next couple of weeks. And yeah, so I will be sharing that. Oh, speaking of canning, so there is going to be a canning collaboration. Now I will formally announce this later on and share all of the details about it, but you can look forward to lots of canning videos because in the month of March, there is going to be a canning collaboration with a whole bunch of other channels, and I am actually the one who is coordinating this one. So be sure to stay tuned for that collaboration announcement where you can hear about all of the fun details. Just a little teaser there. So with that, I'm gonna get back to working on my list and figuring out what all I'm going to be canning over the next few weeks. So thanks for hanging out with me here at the kitchen table here in the homestead with little Miss Ava. My name is Constance at A Good Life Farm, and I'll talk to y'all next time.